Hello there. Good afternoon. I'm Sarah Sinem. I'm the managing editor for Groups Today, the resource for all things group travel. And welcome to Groups Today Midday Break. This is an opportunity for us to go a little deeper and touch on topics that matter most to you, the group travel professional. Today, we're going to delve into the topic of leadership, how our post pandemic approach needs to be retooled and reimagined to match the world and industry we're living in today. To help us address this topic and offer professional insight, I'm joined today by Suzann Foerster, CEO of Suzann Foerster Coaching. Suzanne's passion is helping leaders create robust cultures and guide their teams to achieve business results. Over the past 20 years, Suzanne has successfully coached a range of leaders and teams with a focus on working with C-suite executives and their leadership teams. Among her many, many credentials, Suzanne holds a professional coach certification, is accredited with the International Coaches Federation, and carries a bachelor's degree in business. Please welcome Suzanne. Thank you for joining us.
Hi, thank you, Sarah.
So, leadership is a topic that you're quite familiar with. So, some of these questions, even though they're specific to the travel industry, I'm sure you're going to be able to offer some wonderful insight. Obviously, a lot has changed in the travel industry since the pandemic began. What do leaders need to be thinking of as we move forward and, basically rebuild the whole industry?
Yeah, it's really it's both a challenge and an opportunity, right? And although I work with many different industries, obviously the travel industry, hospitality in general has been hit very hard. All businesses that I work with are really having to reimagine what work will look like in the future. So what the kinds of things that I am advising my clients to do is first, you really need to step back and have a strong vision and think about how can you really need to relearn how have the dynamics changed. Things change so quickly today, particularly with the technology that's available to us, that just staying up without a pandemic is hard, right? You throw in the dynamics and how that changed how we view the world, how we work together, how we operate on top of it, and it just continues to accelerate that. So a couple things. One, I think it's really important to step back and do what I call a postmortem. Take a look at the last 12 months and evaluate, how did you weather this? Were you ready for this kind of disruption? If so, what did you learn from that? If you weren't, what can you learn from that? So really stepping back and evaluating that. And really it can be at both levels. It can be at the business level, but it also can be at a personal level, because this, again, that's what made this so hard. It wasn't just like something that happened at work. This is something that affected every part of our lives. So really stepping back and doing that evaluation and thinking about how you can learn from those experiences for your leadership moving forward.
Mhm.
And you really need to do homework. So I think the second thing is not just looking at the surface, because obviously travel is going to, I'm sure there'll be a huge upswing. I mean, just personally being in the airport 6 months ago to today, I can see, people are more apt for travel, and I'm sure just chomping at the bit to get back out. But to really make sure you take the time to step back and look at, not skating to the puck, but look, you got to skate to where the puck is going. And you need to have time to think about those, read articles, try to get a handle of what's going on in the environment, not just in the travel industry. And then the third thing is to seek counsel. So I think it's really important that we can't know everything, and especially I'm a small business owner too. It is hard to keep up with all the changes in the world, in business and technology, political changes. I mean, there's just so much to grapple with. I think it's important to surround yourself with smart people, people that have different views, that are in touch with different ideas and thoughts to kind of help you be creative and think differently in the new environment.
Yeah, perspective is everything, right?
It is, yeah.
And, self-care, speaking of perspective, that's always been really important. But today, it's more of a priority than ever. How could leaders keep their own cup full so that they can lead and be the best version of themselves for others and for their team?
Yeah, I'm so glad that you asked this question, because this is where a lot of my thinking went when things happened initially. I knew this would be difficult for everyone. And if you were already stressed or anxious or had other things going on in your life, it just, it added to the pile, right? And so, yes, you're right. It's always been important, but under these circumstances, we really need to draw on those self care skills and tools. This is something I harp on my clients all the time. I see high performing leaders as I do a high performing athlete. And I encourage them to treat themselves as if they were that. And the demands, although they might not be as physical, the emotional demands, the mental demands, and absolutely the physical demands of work today is very stressful. So a couple things: having healthy routines and habits. So really stepping back. I'm a huge fan of habits. I think they're really important to develop habits and routines to help us with new behaviors. Really thinking about what's working and maybe what's not working. Are you skipping meals? Are you not, are you skipping exercise? This is the time it feels very counterintuitive. You feel like you're overwhelmed, you're so busy, you don't have time to do that stuff. You just want to sit on the sofa with a pint of ice cream. Totally get it. I've been there. But this is when we really need to step back and nurture ourselves and take care of ourselves, so we're equipped to deal with all of these challenges. I mean, you wouldn't expect yourself to climb Mount Everest and not train and do all of those things. So I want people to think of it that same way. The other thing I really harp on is sleep. Sleep is so important. It's the basis for so many things, for recovery, for pruning the brain, for just our ability to cope with the day. So if that is not going well, I really challenge you to put that first and figure out how you can get good rest every day consistently. Really important.
It
The
makes sense.
last thing, oh, I'm sorry.
It
Go ahead.
makes a huge difference. Sleep is everything.
Huge. Yes. If you've ever had a baby, you know this. It can change your personality.
Yeah.
The last thing is meditation. And there are some fantastic apps. I recommend Headspace a lot to my clients, or some other ones that are out there. And sometimes people have resistance to that, and maybe it feels new agey or something. But there's so much evidence to support that a meditation practice, and it doesn't have to be a big deal. 5-10 minutes a day. Consistency over longevity is really the key with meditation. Can do a world of good for calming your central nervous system, which is part of where all that stress comes from. So if you took one thing, okay, two things, because I want you to sleep. I would suggest some type of picking up an app and trying something for 5 or 10 minutes a day. And honestly, I haven't had a client say that it hasn't been effective for them. So I'm a huge advocate.
And, that brings me to my next point about how this year has been so much about survival for so many people that, we should really be focusing more on thriving as well. How can leaders ensure that they're not only surviving in 2021, but they're thriving by continuing to grow and hone specifically their leadership skills? And perhaps that's in a way that hasn't been thought of in the past.
Yeah, I think so. Thinking about this, a couple things come to mind. First and foremost, I'm going to go back to the last question, which is, if you're not positioning yourself to work at your best, to have the rest, your brain doesn't work well. So I'm going to hammer on that one. You got to take really good care of yourself, your diet, your rest, who you surround yourself with. I mean, really thinking about it. The thing about the pandemic that I've noticed with my clients is I have seen more people stepping back and really thinking about their values. And of course, just the kind of how things were turned upside down, our normal routines, our health being at risk, possibility of dying. I mean, these things are things that we can normally in our normal day-to-day put aside, and the pandemic made it up close and personal that we really needed to consider these things, which in a way is a blessing if you're stepping back and really thinking about, am I doing the things I want to do? Am I spending the time in the ways that I want to spend it? Am I focused on the right thing? So I guess more from a big picture standpoint, that's something that I would strongly encourage. And like I mentioned earlier, it's kind of like the postmortem on your life. Am I on the trajectory I want to be? And am I spending my time in the way that I want to? And am I positioning myself with good self-care to be able to do those things? So that's to me is the foundation. After that, it's leveraging the learning. So don't be too quick to move on, which is our tendency. We want things to get back to normal. And you're also going to be probably bombarded with trying to figure out how to meet the new demand once people feel safe to get out and do things, but really thinking about what you learned and how you're going to leverage that learning. And that's kind of related to the concept of being anti-fragile. So Nassim Taleb wrote a great book about anti-fragility. So if you're kind of into that, that's a great book. But the concept is that resiliency is great, but anti-fragile means that we get stronger by the difficulties that we face. So, it's like when you break a bone, the bone that in the area that you broke actually grows stronger. So that's kind of the idea. How do you position yourself? And for me personally, and for those of the people that are here listening, as a small business owner, it was very scary. My business, and I'm sure for many of you, absolutely just could be gone overnight. And that really made me realize, how I positioned myself. Did I have enough resources so I didn't, put myself in a position to have to do anything dramatic, right? Like lose my house or something like that. So I think thinking about how to create a more anti-fragile life is important. Let's see. Yeah, I talked about the values thing. I think that was the other piece. In regards to specific leadership skills, I think the people that will be successful are those that can really rethink the industry, that can step back and say, okay, what is this going to mean 3, 4, 5 years down the road? And how is this going to impact? Are people going to want to get on a bus and try, maybe, is there going to be more of a virtual component to the work that we do? There's a lot of opportunity to kind of rethink that. So I think those are the people that have that ability to step back and vision and be strategic in how they think about their business. Mm-hmm. The future of work is a hybrid. I've always had that because I have my own business. I mostly work out of my home. So I've adapted my life to I could be on vacation talking to a client on a mountain. I could be, I could be in my car picking up my daughter. I could take Tuesday afternoon off to go to a soccer, but I think more and more people will be working that way. And I think, how is that going to impact how people run their businesses and even how they consume travel products? So a couple other things from a specific skills. Communication is always important. I don't care what the environment. People need to know how to communicate. The challenge today is, how do we communicate in this hybrid environment? And I think right now we're struggling because we have so many tools. We have so many tools to communicate with. And I think the people that will rise to the top will be the ones that figure out how to streamline that process. And so I think there's a lot of opportunity in that. And then I think the EQ skills are extremely important. Again, we're working more with the whole person. We're balancing between working at home and, we were talking earlier about dogs barking in the background, and that ability to help navigate through these difficult times, having empathy for people, being able to be flexible, understanding as people are trying to reacclimate themselves to how the world is going to work. So I think that's another important skill.
Mm-hmm. And
And
speaking of
speaking
those
of the
skills,
skills,
um,
um,
let's talk a
let's
little
talk a
bit
little
about the
about
hiring
the hiring
process.
process.
Um,
Um,
and I'm
and I'm
sorry,
sorry.
for me echoing. I don't know why that's happening. Um, how should tour operators manage their hiring process differently when they're ready to hire staff again? As we know, a lot of the industry had to make some really devastating decisions early on in the pandemic. Should these small companies be considering remote employees? And on top of that, what should employers be looking for in employees right now?
Yeah, so those are a couple really big questions.
Hmm.
The first one being remote, I think that you don't really have a choice if you want to attract top talent. You have to be open to this hybrid way of working, and that means being able to have some level of remote. It doesn't have to be fully remote. It could be a combination depending upon the business. I think it will be an expectation for people because we've proven, right, that it can be done.
Absolutely.
And people don't want to get on planes every day. They don't, to work and those type of things. So I think can be a fantastic opportunity. It can also be a fantastic opportunity, we kind of in the gig economy, right? We don't necessarily have to hire full blown employees. We can work with people on a consulting basis. We can, have them work temporarily. There's lots of new ways of looking at work. It's not the 9 to 5 butts and seats mindset anymore, right? It's
Mhm.
this. And so I think the people that can figure out how to leverage that, because part of it is you want not just cost effective, because I think there's some cost it can be cost effective. You also want to attract top talent. And I believe that that's going to be an expectation of top talent. The challenge is that then we have to come up with new systems and processes to ensure that the quality of work is there when people are remote. And I think that's kind of the flip side of it. How do we ensure the quality of work is there? And how do we stay connected in a virtual world?
Mhm.
Uh, I Zoom and those things, they help, but it's just not the same as physically being in the same space with people. So figuring out that dynamic and how we manage that, depending upon the industry, the team situation, I think that's the kind of the challenges that we're faced with. But I think you have to be open to it and you have to really think about it creatively.
Mhm.
Um, so the other question was, what should they be looking for in employees?
Mhm. Yeah.
Right? I think it's similar to what we talked about with the leaders. Communication, huge. The ability to adapt, right? I mean, for you to be able to embrace what's coming, and because if you have employees that are stuck in the, well, we've always done it this way mindset, of course we've always talked about that, but now it's just dramatically accelerated. We cannot have people that can't move along with us, right, and see that no, that's just not going to work. We've got to offer things in new ways. We've got to offer different type of customer service to the people that we work with. So I think that ability to be adaptable, flexible, and creative. Like you can't figure this out on your own. I'm talking to people all the time. I'm working with clients, and I still feel like there's so much like I need to learn and understand. I was just listening to a podcast on cryptocurrency, and just like, holy moly, there's a lot to keep up with.
There's a lot.
There's a lot, right? And how is this? And does it matter? And what does this mean? And but that is part of great leadership. That ability to not you have to have it all figured out, but you're at least scanning things and trying to imagine the possibilities of what these things might mean to the industry. I mean, those are the people. Those are the people that are always big winners in innovation, right? Because
Mm.
they can see how certain technologies can change an industry in a way that maybe somebody else couldn't. You got to have AI now, and it's like, wow. And again, I relate. I'm a small business owner. How am I supposed to keep up with all of this, right? Corporations have whole departments that work on this, and
Yeah,
so I think that's why it's important to have the good network and have a good, what I call like a board of directors or advisors, that you don't have to have it all figured out, but you have a good team to work with to help you think differently and learn how to adapt in the environment, because that's key. That's really
absolutely. And speaking of being creative, sort of the million-dollar question,
key.
how are tour operators, or how do you suggest that tour operators find a balance between needing staff to meet the anticipated pent-up demand for travel, some of which we're already starting to see manifest itself, um, balancing that between the sales needed to support that staff and bringing them back on board. Um, how do you suggest they find that balance?
Yeah, so I read this question. I was like, well, I wish I had the answer to that question, right?
Well, and everyone wants to know.
Yeah, right. And so you might be disappointed in my answer, but it's a huge challenge. Again, I think this is where creativity has to come in, opening yourself up to new possibilities of how you might obtain capital. So, what does that look like? I see a huge opportunity in strategic partnerships,
Mhm.
thinking about who could, and even if it might be in some way a competitor, I don't rule out anything. It's like, who could we align with that would help us differentiate in some way, offer our services in a new way that would benefit both people, because everybody's, or a lot of people are kind of in this boat, right? They're trying to figure out how to adapt and what that new future is going to look like. So I would encourage people to really consider strategic partnerships or strategic alliances, and how that might help. They could, bolster each other's business, or one might have capital but not have the competencies, vice versa. So I think that's a real opportunity. Um, and as I mentioned before, kind of this gig economy, thinking about, how can you get creative with staff? Do you really need to bring them on? Can they work by project? Can they, there's so many of those, they have websites that you can go on to hire people. I'm not suggesting that that might not work for here, but one of the things that always has helped me from an innovation standpoint is to look at what other businesses are doing, and not necessarily duplicating it, but allowing those innovations to get me thinking about, what would that mean in my business, type of thing. So I'll give you an example. I was at Target, and this is just when Target started their own credit card. And so what they do is they have this credit card that you get, and you get 5% off of everything you purchase at Target with their credit card, and it's connected to your bank account, and there's no fees. Like, that's a huge win for a customer, right? If you're a Target, I'm a big Target customer, so that's huge, right? 5%. But what was really cool was the benefit to Target. They did not have to pay the fees of the credit card companies anymore. Every customer they could get to accept their card, and that far exceeded the 5% that they were giving to the customer. So this huge win-win for the organization and for the customer. Like, to me, that's like that's such a sweet innovation, right? And so I look at, obviously that's not something I can do or apply to my business, but I think, what does that look like for me in my industry? What kind of win-win opportunity do I have in dealing with my clients that kind of inspired me? So that's, I guess, another way to kind of look at how to, because it's going to be creative. It's going to be something creative that those, again, that can come up with unique ways of figuring out how to meet this challenge. But it is tough. It's a huge challenge, and capital will be important. So
Absolutely. And I like what you said about finding the opportunity in partnerships, especially those that are typically thought of as unlikely, because even across some other industries, I've seen that be successful throughout the pandemic so far. So thinking outside the box and really being willing to get creative and maybe starting having those conversations is really, really important.
right.
Um, and not to rule anything out, like you said.
Right. Oh, no, that's the thing. Don't rule it out, pursue it, because sometimes this is what I love about creativity is you're going down a path and that doesn't work out, but takes you down, right, another path that does. And just allowing yourself that space and freedom not to necessarily know, but to be open to creative thinking and ideas is really powerful. So
Absolutely. And Suzanne, was there anything else that we haven't touched on already that you think would be especially beneficial for?
One of the things I thought about in thinking about having an, a vision for the future is also having an amazing place to work. So if you're have employees that again is such a differentiator for attracting top talent. So thinking about how these changes might impact how you nurture your culture and what type of environment that you need to create for the future to attract great, diverse, wonderful people to your business. I think is something to think about. Um, Oh, the other thing I thought of was facing reality. So this is something I talk a lot to leaders about, and I usually see it in the beginning of something like a crisis. It's often hard to. My job is to keep like having leaders face reality, right? Because denial is normal, and so we want to quickly get through that to really accept what we're dealing with. But I also see it in this time too, where we're kind of trying to transition back to some type of normal, and that we, in some ways, we want to just kind of brush it off and move forward. And it's just important to understand that I just don't think it will work that way. Some of it will, absolutely, but some of it won't. And just to keep encouraging people to be open, to think, talk to people, brainstorm, try to think of unique ways, get lots of support. Small business owners need a ton of support because they often have to do the same things a large organization does, but they're, very, very small group. So
Mhm. Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for joining us today, Suzanne, and thank you for everyone who's watching. This was a wonderful conversation and one that hopefully will assist many in the way that they're thinking about approaching leadership and retooling as we move forward. If you'd like to get in touch with Suzanne, you can visit her website. That's suzannfoerster.com, SuzannFoerster.com. And as always, for more group travel industry content, don't forget to visit groupstoday.com, subscribe to our magazine and e-newsletter, follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. Enjoy the rest of your day. Stay safe, and we'll see you again soon.
thank you.
Thank you.